I didn't raise my voice when my daughter tried to legally erase me from my own life. I remember the exact weight of the pen they placed in front of me. Heavy, gold-trimmed, not mine. The restaurant had closed early for the private family dinner. Tuesday, 7:12 p.m. I noticed because the wall clock behind her was 5 minutes fast. She used to hate when clocks were wrong. 3 men in dark suits sat beside her. Legal pads open, tabs marking documents. None of them touched their water glasses. My daughter didn't greet me. She didn't ask how I'd been. She slid the folder across the table and said very evenly, "We can make this simple." I didn't open it yet. I looked at her left hand first. New ring, larger than her engagement band. Not wedding jewelry, statement jewelry. One of the lawyers cleared his throat and turned the document toward me. Power of attorney, financial and medical, immediate effect, irrevocable without court review. I asked one question. Why now? She didn't answer directly. Instead, she reached into her phone, tapped her screen, and turned it toward me. A photo of my grandson at daycare. Time-stamped that morning. Then she said, calm as if discussing catering arrangements, "Either you sign or you don't see him grow up." No anger, no hesitation, just terms. I let the silence sit long enough that the waiter in the hallway peeked in. Then I placed my purse on the table, unzipped it, took out my phone, dialed one number. When the line connected, I said quietly, "Sure, I'll sign." I looked back at her, but first, someone wants to say a few words. The room stayed quiet after I ended the call. No one asked who I had contacted. My daughter assumed it was emotional support. One of the lawyers assumed it was intimidation. The third man finally lifted his water glass, but did not drink. At 7:16 p.m., my phone buzzed on the table. Speaker mode. A measured male voice filled the room. "This is Daniel Mercer. State Bar ID 44127. I'm recording this call." One lawyer shifted in his chair. Daniel continued. "Mrs. Carter, you are not to sign anything. I have not reviewed this document. If anyone pressures you, I will consider that coercion." My daughter's jaw tightened. "I'm not pressuring her," she said. "We're protecting her." Daniel responded, calm. "Then send me the draft. Email, not hard copy. I want metadata intact." The lawyer closest to her closed the folder halfway. I finally opened it. 12 pages. Asset consolidation. Authority over real estate liquidation. Access to retirement accounts. Medical decision override clause. Effective immediately. No triggering condition. No physician certification required. I looked at my daughter. "This gives you control today." She nodded. "You're not getting younger." I am 68. I still drive myself. I file my own taxes. I chair a small nonprofit board twice a month. One of the lawyers spoke for the first time. "It's standard estate planning." I pointed to page 9. "This isn't estate planning. This is transfer of control." No one corrected me. Daniel's voice cut back in. "I'm emailing a revocation notice template. Do not sign anything tonight." My daughter leaned back. "Mom, why are you making this ugly?" I folded the document neatly and placed it back in the folder. "Because you brought 3 lawyers to dinner," I said. She inhaled sharply but stayed composed. "I tried calling you last week," she said. "You refused to help with the wedding." There it was. The wedding budget I declined to fund. Venue upgrade. Imported flowers. 5-figure entertainment contract. I had offered a smaller amount. Clearly defined. Wire transfer, not open-ended access. She called it embarrassing. 2 days later, she blocked me. 7 days later, this dinner invitation arrived. I asked one direct question. "Is this about the wedding or my estate?" She did not answer immediately. Instead, she glanced at the lawyer on her right. He gave a slight nod. "It's about stability," she said finally. "For who?" I asked. Silence again. Daniel spoke once more. "Mrs. Carter, leave the restaurant. Do not engage further." I stood. No one tried to stop me. At the door, my daughter said, "If you walk out, don't expect to see him." I turned back. That thread is now recorded, Daniel said through the phone. Her expression changed slightly then. Not fear. Calculation. I left at 7:28 p.m. The parking lot was half lit. My car was parked under a flickering lamp. I sat inside for a full 2 minutes before starting the engine. At 7:34 p.m., I texted Daniel, "Send certified copy requests tomorrow." At 8:02 p.m., I forwarded the dinner invitation email to him. At 8:17 p.m., I opened my laptop at home and logged into my bank portal. No changes yet. At 8:41 p.m., I reviewed beneficiary designations on 3 accounts. All intact. At 9:03 p.m., I checked property titles through the county website. No filings. At 9:27 p.m., I created a new folder on my desktop labeled May 14th, date of the dinner. Inside it, I saved the invitation email, screenshots of the call log, a scanned copy of the unsigned power of attorney, my bank balance statements from that day. Then I printed everything. Hard copies matter. At 10:12 p.m., Daniel emailed. Subject line. Pattern. The body contained one sentence. Has she asked for account access before? I thought about it. Last year she wanted to help streamline my online passwords. 3 months ago she suggested adding her as joint owner for emergencies. 2 weeks before the wedding dispute, she asked what my monthly passive income was from rental property. I had answered vaguely. I replied to Daniel at 10:24 p.m. Yes, 3 prior attempts, different language each time. He responded at 10:31 p.m. That's escalation. I closed the laptop. In the kitchen, the dishwasher light blinked blue. I had loaded it before leaving for dinner. I pressed start. Ordinary tasks, ground decisions. At 10:47 p.m., my phone vibrated. Unknown number. I let it ring twice before answering. It was my daughter's fiancé. Can we talk? He asked. About what? I said, about tonight. It got out of hand. It was planned, I replied. Silence on his end. I didn't think they'd present it like that. He said, finally, I asked. He corrected himself. She. That detail mattered. I asked him one question. Did you know about the daycare photo? Long pause. No, he said. I ended the call. At 11:06 p.m., I wrote one final note in a legal pad beside my bed. Photo leverage. Coordinated. 3 attorneys. No physician trigger clause. Then I turned off the lamp. The next morning at 8:15 a.m., I drove to my bank branch in person, not because something had changed, because documentation must begin before damage appears. At 8:15 a.m., I signed the visitor log at my bank branch. The manager, Linda, had known me for 12 years. She met me near the safe deposit area. I need to place an alert on all accounts, I said. No structural changes without in-person verification. She did not ask why. At 8:22 a.m., she printed authorization forms. Dual authentication requirement. No digital-only modifications. No power of attorney activation without my physical presence. I signed 3 pages. At 8:31 a.m., I asked for a full transaction history export for the past 18 months. USB copy and printed summary. Linda hesitated slightly. Everything all right? Yes, I said, but I prefer paper. At 8:47 a.m., I left with a sealed envelope containing statements. From there, I drove directly to the county recorder's office. 9:12 a.m. ticket number A47. I requested certified copies of my property deeds and a pending lien report. The clerk stamped the receipt at 9:28 a.m. No new filings. By 10:05 a.m., I was home reviewing the 18-month statements line by line. 2 things stood out. 3 months ago, my daughter had requested a cashier's check for a vendor deposit related to the wedding. I declined at the time. The request email, however, contained a phrase, "It will streamline things later." Same wording she used last year about password access. Streamline. At 11:14 a.m., Daniel called. I reviewed the scan you sent. He said, The POA includes immediate asset consolidation authority. That's unusual unless incapacity is documented. No medical evaluation was referenced. I said, "Exactly," he replied. He paused. "Do you want me to send a formal notice to her attorneys?" "Not yet," I said. Silence can reveal structure. At 12:03 p.m., my phone buzzed with a calendar notification. Lunch with Margaret. I considered canceling. Instead, I went. Margaret has been on the nonprofit board with me for 6 years. She pays attention. At 12:41 p.m., seated at our usual table, she asked, "You look focused." "Dinner last night," I said. "Legal paperwork." She waited. I gave her facts only. 3 lawyers. Power of attorney. Grandchild leverage. Margaret placed her fork down. "That's not estate planning," she said. "That's transfer timing." "Yes," I replied. She leaned back. "Are you ill?" "No." "Have you been declared incompetent?" "No." She nodded slowly. Then she said something that clarified the pattern. "Has she been struggling financially?" I did not answer immediately. Instead, I remembered the engagement party venue upgrade, the imported floral contract, the sudden vendor deposits, and the fiancé's call the night before. At 1:06 p.m., my phone vibrated. It was him again. I excused myself and stepped outside. "I need to tell you something," he said. "Go ahead." "She's overextended," he said. "Credit lines, vendor penalties. She thought your contribution would cover it." "How much?" I asked. "More than she admitted." "Did she draft the POA?" I asked. "No," he said. "Her uncle suggested it." That was new. Her uncle works in commercial real estate development. Aggressive financing background. I ended the call at 1:14 p.m. When I returned to the table, Margaret watched my face. "Pattern confirmed?" she asked quietly. "Yes," I said. At 2:02 p.m., I was back home reviewing the engagement party contracts she had emailed months earlier for opinions. Clause 14 in the venue agreement required full payment 30 days before the wedding. That date was approaching. At 2:47 p.m., Daniel emailed again. Subject line, escalation options. He listed 3. Preemptive legal notice to her attorneys. Formal revocation of any future POA attempts. Quiet monitoring and evidence preservation. I chose option 3. At 3:15 p.m., I logged into the daycare parent portal using the access credentials she had once shared. My name was still listed as emergency contact. At 3:22 p.m., I took screenshots. At 3:47 p.m., I drafted a simple email to my daughter. Subject, dinner documents. Body, please send a digital copy of last night's draft for review. She responded at 4:03 p.m. No need. It's standard. I replied at 4:09 p.m. Standard documents are always shareable. No answer after that. At 6:18 p.m., my grandson's daycare posted a group photo update. I saved it. At 7:42 p.m., my daughter finally texted, "If you won't help, just say it." I typed once, deleted it, then replied at 7:46 p.m. I already did. No anger. No explanation. At 8:11 p.m., Daniel called again. "I've looked into her uncle," he said. 2 prior civil disputes involving asset transfers during family restructuring. Outcome? I asked. Settled before trial. At 8:19 p.m., I opened a new physical folder labeled Vendor Timeline. Inside, I placed printed wedding contracts, the engagement party agreement, email exchanges referencing deposits, a handwritten list of dates. At 9:02 p.m., I received a forwarded email accidentally sent to me instead of her uncle. Subject, liquidity bridge. Attached, a spreadsheet estimating short-term coverage if access granted. Access granted. Not gift. Not contribution. Access. That was the moment the choice became clear. If I signed, I would not simply fund a wedding. I would enable consolidation. At 9:17 p.m., I forwarded the email to Daniel without comment. At 9:24 p.m., he responded with one sentence. "Now we wait." Because once pressure fails, desperation accelerates. And escalation creates mistakes. The first boundary crossed 5 days after the dinner. It happened at 9:06 a.m. on a Monday. I was reviewing tenant maintenance invoices when my phone displayed a banking notification. Not a transaction. A login alert. Unrecognized device. Location. Same city, different IP block. I did not panic. I wrote the time down first. 9:06 a.m. Then I logged in myself. No structural changes. No transfers. But the security settings page had been opened within the last 10 minutes. At 9:14 a.m., I called the bank's fraud line and requested a login audit trail. Reference number issued. F33821. At 9:22 a.m., I texted my daughter, "Did you try accessing my accounts this morning?" She replied at 9:29 a.m., "No. Why would I?" I did not respond. At 10:03 a.m., Daniel called after reviewing the bank's preliminary system log. The access attempt used an old saved credential pathway. He said, "From when?" I asked. "Password recovery initiated through a device that once had authorized visibility. Last year, she sat beside me at my kitchen table when I reset my email password after a phishing attempt. She insisted on helping." I remembered that moment clearly. At 10:41 a.m., Daniel said, "We don't confront yet. We document." Boundary crossing requires repetition to become proof. The second incident came 3 days later. Thursday, 2:17 p.m., I received an automated notification from my pharmacy. Prescription inquiry submitted under my profile. I have no active prescriptions. I called the pharmacy at 2:24 p.m. The technician confirmed someone had inquired about medication coverage tied to my insurance. Caller identified herself as my daughter. Purpose listed as future care planning. I requested the call log. Reference ID. RX 77104. At 3:02 p.m., I added the pharmacy transcript to the May 14th folder. Medical Authority Inquiry. Step 1. The third boundary was more direct. Saturday morning, 8:52 a.m. I was watering the plants on my back patio when my doorbell camera pinged. My daughter stood outside with her uncle. He carried a folder. I did not open the door immediately. I watched through the live feed. At 8:54 a.m., she texted, "We just want to talk." I responded through the intercom. "You can email." Her uncle stepped closer to the camera. "This delay complicates things," he said. I saved the video clip. At 8:57 a.m., she spoke again. "You're making us do this the hard way." I did not respond. They left at 9:01 a.m. At 9:06 a.m., Daniel called after I forwarded the footage. "That statement matters," he said, specifically the plural language. Us, not her. Step 2 of the self-incrimination loop was forming coordinated pressure. At 11:13 a.m., my daughter emailed. Subject, clarification. Attached, a revised power of attorney draft. This version included a physician certification clause, but the effective date was still immediate upon signature. Daniel reviewed it within the hour. This revision acknowledges the first draft was overreaching. He said, "That's useful." Document evolution reveals intent. At 2:48 p.m., I received another unexpected contact. My grandson's daycare administrator called. "There's been a request to modify pickup authorization." She said, "By whom?" I asked. "Your daughter requested removal of all secondary contacts. That included me." I asked one question. "Has it been processed?" "No," she said. "We require written confirmation from both parents." I requested written documentation of the request. Email arrived at 3:17 p.m. Administrative change attempt. Child leverage escalation. Step 2 confirmed. At 4:02 p.m., Daniel summarized the pattern in writing. Financial access attempt, bank login. Medical authority positioning, pharmacy inquiry. Child contact leverage, daycare removal. 3 domains. Financial, medical, familial, all aligning with POA activation authority. At 6:11 p.m., my daughter finally called directly. I answered. Her tone was controlled but tighter than before. "You're forcing legal involvement," she said. "I'm observing behavior." I replied, "You're making this adversarial." "You brought lawyers to dinner," I said. Pause. Then she said something that completed step 2 of the self-incrimination loop. "If you don't cooperate, we'll have to pursue incapacity review." I did not respond verbally. I wrote the sentence down as she spoke it. 6:14 p.m. Exact wording. Medical challenge, threat. She continued, "You're isolating yourself. That raises concerns." That statement mattered procedurally. At 6:17 p.m., I ended the call without escalation. At 6:42 p.m., Daniel emailed, subject, documentation milestone. He wrote, "We now have direct verbal indication of intent to pursue incapacity proceedings. Step 2 complete, but self-incrimination requires a third component, proof that their actions contradict their claims." That arrived sooner than expected. Monday morning, 9:33 a.m., I received an automated email from my nonprofit's governance system. Board member contact update, submitted under my profile. New emergency contact listed. My daughter. I had not authorized it. Timestamp. 8:58 a.m. Same morning, she emailed vendors about payment extensions. At 10:04 a.m., Daniel reviewed the submission log. It was filed from her IP. He said, "Authority positioning in professional domain," while simultaneously claiming I was incapable of managing my affairs. Contradiction forming. Step 3 beginning. Because incapacity claims require evidence of decline. Yet she was expanding her authority footprint administratively. At 11:12 a.m., I requested the nonprofit's IT audit trail. At 11:47 a.m., confirmation arrived. Her login attempt had used credentials she once accessed when helping me upload board reports. Unauthorized reuse. Self-incrimination loop nearing completion. But the system response had not yet activated. And until institutions react, patterns remain private evidence. So we continued documenting. Quietly, precisely, waiting for procedural thresholds to be crossed. The third step completed itself on Wednesday at 1:26 p.m. I was seated at my dining table reviewing the nonprofit's audit trail when my landline rang. Few people use that number anymore. It was the office of a private geriatric assessment service. The woman on the line spoke carefully. "We received a preliminary inquiry regarding a cognitive evaluation for you." "From whom?" I asked. She hesitated. "A family member. We were told you might be resistant." "I have not requested an evaluation," I said. She paused again. "In that case, we will document that this inquiry was not initiated by you. Please send written confirmation of that," I said. Email arrived at 1:41 p.m. Subject, clarification of unsolicited assessment inquiry. That was step 3. They had positioned me as medically questionable while simultaneously trying to gain financial and administrative control. Incapacity narrative on one track, authority expansion on another. At 2:05 p.m., Daniel called. "That's the trigger," he said. "Now institutions must respond." At 2:22 p.m., he drafted a formal notice to the 3 attorneys who attended the dinner. The letter included the initial POA draft without physician trigger, the revised version acknowledging changes, the bank login audit, the pharmacy inquiry record, the daycare modification attempt, the nonprofit unauthorized update, the unsolicited cognitive assessment inquiry, each item dated and timestamped. No commentary, just documentation. The notice requested written clarification of their involvement in actions that could be construed as coercive or fraudulent prepositioning. At 3:04 p.m., it was sent via certified email and overnight courier. By 4:18 p.m., 2 of the 3 attorneys responded. Short messages. We were unaware of subsequent actions. Our engagement was limited to estate planning consultation. The 3rd attorney did not reply. At 5:32 p.m., my daughter called. I did not answer. She left a voicemail. You're blowing this out of proportion. I saved the file. Thursday morning at 9:11 a.m., the nonprofit's governance chair requested an emergency compliance review meeting. I attended virtually at 10 a.m. No dramatics, just procedure. The IT administrator confirmed unauthorized credential reuse from an external IP. Board policy requires formal reporting of attempted unauthorized access. A compliance note was entered, not public, but recorded at 11:27 a.m. The bank's fraud department called back regarding reference F33821. They confirmed the login attempt originated from a residential IP registered under my daughter's fiancé's address. That detail mattered because during her 6:11 p.m. call, she had claimed no knowledge of any access attempt. At 12:03 p.m., Daniel updated the timeline. Verbal denial, technical trace, contradiction sealed. At 1:15 p.m., the pharmacy corporate office responded to my request. They confirmed that no medical authorization had been granted to my daughter and flagged the inquiry internally as a potential privacy boundary violation. At 2:40 p.m., daycare administration emailed confirmation that no contact changes would occur without dual parental authorization and documented the attempted removal. Institutional resistance had begun. No confrontation required, just process. Friday at 8:48 a.m., the third attorney finally replied. His email was concise. We were retained for document drafting only. We had no involvement in subsequent personal actions. Daniel forwarded that message back with a single attachment, the time-stamped cognitive assessment inquiry email. Within 20 minutes, that attorney requested a phone call. They spoke at 9:22 a.m. Afterward, Daniel summarized it for me. He was not informed of any incapacity strategy. Daniel said, he is distancing himself. At 11:05 a.m., my daughter sent a new message. Subject, misunderstanding. The body read, this has gotten bigger than it needed to be. No apology, no acknowledgement of specific actions. At 12:17 p.m., I received notice that her uncle had withdrawn as contact on the nonprofit portal after being informed of compliance review. Administrative retreat. At 1:54 p.m., the Geriatric Assessment Service sent confirmation that the inquiry had been formally closed due to lack of consent. Documentation complete. By Monday morning, two measurable consequences were visible. First, the attorneys formally terminated their engagement, citing incomplete disclosure of relevant facts. Second, my daughter's fiancé sent me a brief email. I was not aware of the login attempt or medical inquiry. I'm reconsidering things. I did not respond because system response is not dramatic. It is incremental. Bank flags, compliance notes, professional distancing. At 3:06 p.m. Monday, my daughter called again. This time, her tone was different. We can stop this, she said. There is nothing to stop, I replied. You involved lawyers. You brought them first. Silence. Then she said something final. You've embarrassed me. I did not answer. Embarrassment is not evidence. At 3:14 p.m., I ended the call. That evening at 7:22 p.m., I walked to my mailbox and retrieved a certified envelope. Inside was a formal letter withdrawing the original power of attorney proposal. Unsigned. No future draft attached. No further demand. The system had responded. Not loudly, but definitively. The first visible fracture appeared 3 weeks after the attorneys withdrew. It did not involve me directly. At 9:08 a.m. on a Thursday, I received an automated vendor email forwarded to me by mistake. Subject, payment escalation notice. It referenced the wedding venue balance. Past due. I had been copied because my email remained on the original engagement contract thread from months earlier. No one had removed it. At 9:22 a.m., I archived the message without replying. By 11:47 a.m., a second email arrived from the floral importer. Shipment, release pending final transfer. Penalty window approaching. At 1:03 p.m., I noticed something procedural. The tone of the vendor correspondence had shifted. Shorter language, legal phrasing, Deposit protection clauses referenced. At 2:18 p.m., my daughter emailed the venue requesting a 30-day extension. The venue declined within 40 minutes. Policy citation attached. At 3:06 p.m., her uncle's development firm domain appeared CC'd on the thread. Not as guarantor, as advisor. At 3:44 p.m., the venue replied requesting third-party financial assurances if payment could not be completed personally. No response followed that day. Friday morning at 8:31 a.m., I received a missed call notification from her number. No voicemail. At 10:12 a.m., a different email arrived. Subject: Budget adjustment meeting. It had been sent to the wedding planning team, accidentally including me again through an old reply chain. Inside was a revised cost sheet. Entertainment contract removed. Imported floral quantities reduced by half. Guest transportation downgraded. No one mentioned my name, but the adjustments followed the exact categories I had declined to fund months earlier. At 12:05 p.m., Daniel emailed me separately. Do not engage. Observing only. I had not intended to respond anyway. By Monday, additional vendor notices surfaced. Catering required final headcount confirmation or deposit forfeiture. The photographer requested contract reaffirmation due to payment uncertainty. Each message carried tighter deadlines. At 2:47 p.m. Monday, I noticed my daughter had mistakenly used her fiancé's corporate email to negotiate installment terms. That detail mattered because corporate accounts maintain permanent archives. At 3:16 p.m., her fiancé forwarded one thread to me with a single sentence. I didn't know it was this extended. I did not reply. Tuesday afternoon at 1:38 p.m., the wedding planner sent a structured contingency outline. 3 scenarios: full payment continuation, scaled event restructuring, venue release with deposit forfeiture. No emotional language, just options. By Wednesday morning, the florist formally paused shipment preparation. Contract clause 9.2 invoked. At 10:22 a.m., my daughter emailed all vendors requesting discretion due to family sensitivities. No vendor acknowledged that phrasing. They referenced only payment schedules. At 1:11 p.m., I received an unexpected notice from the Nonprofit Compliance Office. Routine quarterly disclosure review. During credential audits, they had expanded monitoring across all board member accounts. Standard policy after unauthorized access attempts. No names listed, but the procedural ripple was clear. At 4:05 p.m., Daniel called. Your documentation triggered compliance tightening, he said. I assumed as much. No accusations, he added, just structural reinforcement. Thursday evening at 6:42 p.m., my daughter's fiancé called again. His tone was quieter. We postponed the venue upgrade. He said, I said nothing. He continued, she didn't tell me the deposits were non-refundable. I asked one question. Did you know about the incapacity inquiry? Silence followed. No, he said. At 6:49 p.m., the call ended. 2 days later, an administrative mistake surfaced publicly. A wedding website registry update accidentally listed my financial advisor as event sponsor. I had not authorized that. Guests began sending congratulatory messages referencing my generosity. At 9:18 a.m., my daughter emailed the platform requesting immediate correction. The platform responded that sponsor fields required verification documentation to remove. She provided none. The listing stayed live for 48 hours. At 11:37 a.m., Daniel sent me a screenshot. Administrative overreach creates audit trails, he wrote. By the following Monday, vendor pressure had intensified. Late fee warnings, deposit protection reminders, contractual renegotiation fees. None referenced me directly, but each communication reflected an expanding financial strain. At 2:03 p.m., the wedding planner issued a final timeline recalibration. Guest count reduced. Entertainment eliminated. Reception shortened. No emotional commentary. Just operational scaling. I remained silent through all of it. No calls. No offers. No confrontation. 3 weeks later, The venue released a public availability notice for the original upgraded date, meaning the reservation had been relinquished, not canceled outright, restructured to a smaller hall on the same property. Procedural downgrade. At 4:26 p.m. that afternoon, my daughter texted, "We're keeping it intimate now." I read the message once, then placed the phone face down on the kitchen counter beside the grocery list I was writing. No reply required, because collapse, when built on leverage rather than stability, does not require witnesses. It unfolds through missed payments, withdrawn contracts, corrected registries, and administrative reversals.